I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. And this is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast. It's Wednesday, June 29th. Rishi Sunak is one of the most senior people in the UK government. This year, he announced that he wanted to establish the country as a global hub for crypto. But he's got some catching up to do. The competition between different countries who are trying to attract crypto talent is only getting more intense. But this environment, in which politicians seem to be willing to make major concessions to the crypto industry, gives rise to an important question. Who's standing up for consumer protections?
Nikhil Ratty, who runs the FCA, he doesn't have very much time for crypto. He says repeatedly that anyone who invests in crypto must expect to lose all their money.
That's Bloomberg reporter Will Shaw. He joins me now to share more about the regulatory landscape for consumer protection in the UK. Will, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
You have been reporting on the UK and UK financial services for a fair amount of time. And more recently, you have joined the, shall we say, slightly more chaotic crypto beat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's I've gone from covering LIBOR transition, which is all very dry regulation, to suddenly a sort of Wild West world of crypto assets.
Certainly a popular phrase around here, Wild West. So one of the areas of concern in that more chaotic environment is the idea of consumer protections. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners a little bit more of your reporting on what that looks like or perhaps doesn't look like in the UK.
Yeah, I think the way to understand this, first of all, is that a lot of this is coming from the UK Financial Conduct Authority, which is the main city regulator.
And the city, you mean the City of London?
Exactly, the City of London, yeah. And to sort of understand the FCA a bit, you have to understand Nikhil Ratty, who runs the FCA. He doesn't have very much time for crypto. He grew up in a former shipbuilding town in the northwest of England called Barrow-in-Furness, where his dad was a local doctor and a magistrate. He grew up watching trials at the local magistrates' court and was influenced by his dad's work with people that come from poorer backgrounds. And he's not very receptive to anything that might be deemed a scam directed at the vulnerable or a get-rich scheme.
We've seen an explosion among younger people speculating on cryptocurrencies or other high-risk investments. There is evidence, too, that as with the GameStop episode, more people see investment as entertainment, behaving less rationally and more emotionally, egged on by anonymous and unaccountable social media influencers. That's why we are creating an £11 million digital marketing campaign to warn them of the risks. As we have repeatedly made clear, investors in crypto assets should be prepared to lose all their money.
And that's a pretty big contrast to other folks in, sort of high positions of UK authority in government and regulation, some of whom have been extremely enthusiastic about the possibilities for crypto and saying things like they want the UK to become a global hub for this asset class.
That kind of messaging is coming primarily from the Treasury, this idea as Britain is a global hub for crypto tech. It's something quite new. It's messaging that's quite new. I don't think there are necessarily really detailed, thought through ideas behind that position yet. Mm-hmm. And that's partly why it's the FCA which is still setting the tone. But Britain obviously has recently come out of the European Union, and it's got this opportunity to remake its regulations away from the framework from Brussels. And I think among optimists, there's a bit of a hope that this might mean the kind of regulatory reforms that might help blockchain projects to take root a bit in Britain. I think it's still quite early stages.
What are some of the examples of the kinds of consumer protections that the FCA has either put into place or is considering?
Over the past 2 years, the FCA has effectively banned Binance, the world's biggest crypto exchange by trading volume, from the UK. It's denied permission for so-called crypto ATMs, and it's made its standards for doing business so stringent that most digital currency companies that want to operate here are not able to do so. It's all been done quite interestingly through anti-money laundering rules, which weren't crafted, obviously, with the crypto industry in mind. So everything is being seen through that prism in the absence of a more established set of rules that have been set up to deal specifically with crypto.
In the absence of those rules, as you say, you're getting this kind of harder line, as it were, from the FCA. Do you think there's a world in which, if the Treasury does start to firm up a set of recommendations or even, policy or legislation, there may be like a meeting in the middle of these two approaches?
I think that's probably right. The chief executive officer for Goldman Sachs International was speaking at a conference in London in April. He sort of said that UK regulators could end up becoming world leaders in crafting rules for crypto, provided that Britain moves fast. And there is certainly interest among big banks in what blockchain technology might mean for the bond trade, for example, and whether it can be incorporated into settlements in the bond trade. And I think probably that's what the Treasury is getting at when it talks about Britain being a global hub for crypto technology rather than crypto assets. At the moment, that's all in its very early stages. What we've really got here, the narrative at the moment really is about protecting ordinary consumers from risky products that can swing very dramatically in price.
To your point about that very nuanced distinction between the idea of a crypto asset, which might be something like a coin or a token or an NFT, and crypto technology, which is largely, in kind of the context of the blockchain that you described, could have potentially interesting financial services regulations. Most consumers are most likely to encounter like Bitcoin in the wild rather than an internal blockchain project at a major investment bank.
Yeah, that's exactly right, isn't it? I mean, the Treasury is talking effectively about a crypto industry that doesn't really exist yet. It's talking about a kind of utopian situation where Britain is a world leader on a technology that hasn't really taken root yet in the way that the Treasury envisages. Whereas what the FCA is dealing with is the crypto industry as it stands.
Thank you, Will. We'll be right back. I think that's such an important distinction, and one that seems to be very similar to the discussions that are happening here in the US with the SEC and the CFTC, the two biggest regulators that are attempting to kind of divvy up the world of crypto regulation between them. And then, of course, there are developments happening in the EU as well. Can you talk a little bit more about what those look like compared with what you're seeing in the UK?
One of the things that people say about the US versus the UK when it comes to regulating crypto is that at least in Britain, we know who is regulating crypto.
That's a fair point.
Which is the Financial Conduct Authority, which effectively simplifies the issue for people a lot. Whereas I think in America, there are kind of wide questions about exactly which regulator is doing what when it comes to digital assets. In terms of the European Union, so obviously Britain's not in the European Union anymore, each individual country is dealing with the crypto industry based on its own national laws, again, which haven't really been devised with crypto in mind. European regulators want to see a big pan-European legislative framework put in place in order to deal with this and to standardize everything. There's no indication that that's going to happen anytime soon. So to some degree, I think crypto firms are trying to work out which particular part of the European Union might be more receptive to their approaches. So if you look at Binance, for example, they got regulatory approval from the French government
and
last
the Italians.
Month. And the Italians, and as I understand, they're seeking it in Germany as well. They've been over in Britain. They're making similar overtures in the UK. So they Changpeng Zhao, the CEO, was in town in early March for a dinner with people from the industry, people from government, a couple of politicians. By all accounts, it was something of a diplomatic offensive with them. Just trying to warm people up, but build confidence in the idea of Binance. At the moment, I think there is a big contrast between the approach that France has taken and the approach that the UK has taken when it comes to Binance. The UK is just seem to be taking a harder line.
One of the interesting things about what you mentioned in terms of the EU, as it will do, it's the European Union trying to get a big sweepy agreement that wraps in these 27 member states, is from a lot of folks in the crypto industry's perspective, what they need, right? What they need is consistency. It's much harder, they say, for them to, on a country by country, or even in the US, on a state by state basis, be dealing with slightly different regulations depending on where they want to operate. Do you have a perspective on, whether from folks in the industry or folks in the UK government or regulators, where the UK is actually trying to move closer to something that resembles an aligned global regulatory framework, or this is still very much each country to itself?
Crypto firms are alive to that kind of rhetoric which is coming out. But at the same time, I think they know that one of the things that's holding back the crypto industry is a lack of comprehensive, standardized regulation that enables everyone to deal with each other on equal terms. And I think there is a sense that, by standardizing the rules, not just in the European Union, but sort of around the world, that might be what it takes to bring crypto in and to add a bit more respectability to it, bring it more into the mainstream.
Thank you, Will. That was so interesting. You can find more of Will's reporting on the Bloomberg terminal, on Bloomberg.com, or follow him on Twitter. He's at WilliamShaw546. It might feel like there's always some kind of election happening in the US, and that's because there is. State and local elections can happen every year, while congressional midterms occur every other year, allowing US voters to decide who will represent them. These elections really matter, and crypto executives are spending significant amounts of money to influence them. In 2022, for the very first time, political spending by major figures in the crypto industry eclipsed the dollars being spent on influencing elections by more traditional donors, like folks who work in big tech or pharmaceuticals. On the next episode of Bloomberg Crypto, reporter Alison Versprell joins me to share her reporting on why crypto is emerging as a significant financial force in US politics. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, and this is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Email your questions, comments, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net. And you'll find us on Twitter @crypto. The supervising producer of this episode is Vicky Vergalina. Our producer is Mohammed Farouk. Associate producer is Zanab Siddiqui. Associate producer is Ty Butler. Associate producer is Moses Andam. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Bloomberg's head of podcasts is Francesca Levy.